Hi, this is Greg Wagner, and I'm going to be going over the basics of sports betting. And so, sports betting is a multi-billion-dollar business. And basically, it's very similar to the way that casinos make money off of poker. What basically the casinos are trying to do is they're trying to balance the odds of their sports books so they can have even betting on both sides, and then just take a percentage of what the bets are from the winners and use the money from the losers to pay the winners. So they're basically acting as brokers between winners and losers or people that want to bet on sports events. And so what the casinos do is they adjust the odds throughout the day after they initially put the initial lines out there, or the initial odds for a particular event, so that so the betting is equal on both sides and they make money. What they don't want is betting being lopsided in one direction or the other. And so, but basically that's all the sports book is basically it's acting as a broker between people that want to bet on sporting events. And so before I actually get into how you bet on these events or these sports, I need to kind of talk about the odds, because the odds are kind of key to understanding how to bet on games. So there's basically three types of odds. There's fractional, money line, and decimal. For fractional odds, you basically see this as a fraction like you learned out when you were in grade school, where it's between, you'll see odds as 4 to 1. So basically the odds are the top number you say, and then you say in the dash is 4 to 1s or 2 to 3 odds. And you'll generally see these in the United Kingdom, Ireland. Also, you'll see them in the United States on future bets and in horse racing. The next bet is very common in the United States. It's called the Moneyline Odds. And basically, you'll see this as a value in its hundreds with a plus or minus. The plus symbols that realizes that's an underdog, and the minus shows that that's a positive. And we'll go into this a little bit later. And again, like I said, these are generally used in the United States for betting on specific games. And you'll see decimal odds. Decimal odds, basically, you see them as decimals. And so basically, the way decimal odds are really easy to calculate. If you win, how much money you're going to get back. You basically multiply the number you're betting times the decimals, and that's how much money you're going to get back. These are generally used in continental Europe for sports, Canada, Australia, so the English-speaking world outside the United States and the British Isles. But also, sometimes I've seen these on Irish betting sites and sometimes on British betting sites as well. So they're kind of pretty common. But generally, these are the three types of odds you'll see. I'm mostly going to be focused on moneyline odds, since sports betting is kind of booming in the United States, and that's where I live. And so, but first off, I'm going to go over fractional odds. So these are going to be reflected as a multiple of your winnings over the amount you bet. So basically what they are is, say you have an example of 3 to 2 odds. If you bet $10, your winnings will be $15. So that's how much money you get back in addition to the amount you bet if you win. And so you can calculate what your winnings are going to be for fractional odds by basically multiplying the amount you bet times what the actual fraction for the odds would be. So in this case, it would be 3 divided by 2, so it's 1.5 times 10 equals 15. And so fractional odds are a fairly straightforward way of calculating how much you're going to win. It's not as easy as decimal odds, but it's still pretty easy to calculate. So say, for example, I want to calculate the championship odds for a particular future event. So say like a Super Bowl or Stanley Cup or something like that. So these are future odds. So you see I have 4 to 1 odds for Team 1, 9 to 2 odds for Team 2, and 11 to 2 odds for Team C. What that would mean is, as the numbers get bigger on the odds, so the top numbers are winning, it basically means that team's less likely to win. And so if you bet on a $10 bet on 4 to 1 odds, your winnings would be $40, and your total money you get back is $50. So you get your money back plus what you bet. For 9 to 2 odds, you get $45 back plus what you bet, so you get $55 in total. And I calculated the $45 by calculating 10 times 9 divided by 2, which is 4.5, and so 10 times 4.5 is 45. And then 11 to 2 odds would be $55 back, so a total of $65 total. So I calculated that by 11 divided by 2, which is 5.5. 5.5 times 10 is your total bet return. So these are a fairly easy way to calculate them. Basically, just multiply how much you bet times what the odds are. And so if you need a calculator to calculate this, also on your betting tab, it'll show you how much you win. And so for moneyline odds, you basically have a value that's, and these are kind of the most complicated values to calculate, but you have a positive and negative value that's in the hundreds. And if a number is positive, you get to return. Your return is, to calculate your return, is you divide that number by 100. So you have a positive number, and I'll have an example in a second. So say if it's a positive 110, you divide 110 divided by 100 was what your return is going to be. And then you have a negative value. You divide 100 by the positive value. So in this case, if it's negative 100, you would do this. So for example, I have 150, plus 150 is for the odds. I would divide 100 from that 150, and so basically what I would do is I would be winning, if I bet $100, I would be getting $150 as my winnings, plus what I bet, so I'd get $250 back. If I had a negative 110, so this is a very typical like betting on a spread, which we'll talk about later. So if it's a negative number, I have 100 divided by that negative number, the absolute value of that negative number, and so for example, if I bet $100, I'm basically getting $91 back. Or in other words, to get $100 winnings, I'd have to bet $110. So it's basically the negative number is how much you would have to bet to get $100 back. And so kind of give you an example of this. So say I have a money line, so I'm betting on a straight up game where I want to pick between either Team A or Team B winning. If I bet $10 on it, my winnings would be if I bet on the underdog. So the underdog is going to be the positive value. If I bet $10, I'd get $15.50 back, or a total of $25.50 as my total winnings if I win, my total bet winnings. And then again, if I bet on $10 on the negative 175, to calculate that value again, you have 100 divided by 175, so it's a negative number. I think a negative number being on the bottom since it's lower of the 100 that you're dividing by. And so my winnings would be $5.71, and basically my total wins would be $15.71. Generally, casinos, they'll round up to the nearest nickel because they don't want to give out a lot of pennies. So you'd get $15.71. And the final one is decimal odds. And so these are reflected as a decimal number and the total return you picked correctly. So say, for example, I have 1.5 odds that my team's going to win. When I bet $10, this is basically a decimal of the fractional odds plus 1. So what I'd be doing is I'd be getting $15 back total. So that would include both my initial bet of $10 plus my winning. So decimal odds are actually the easiest to calculate of how much you're going to win because you basically just multiply your number that you bet times the decimal odds. Now again, these are mostly common in continental Europe. You don't see them a whole lot in the United States, and I've actually never seen these in an actual physical casino because I've only gone to casinos in the U.S. But I have seen these on European betting sites, and also on you also see these a lot on not actually sports books, but outcome brokers. So like where you actually just, which are a little bit different than sports books, where you basically negotiate with someone to get odds on a particular game. They take a cut of the money, which is a little bit different, but you'll see, I've seen these before basically on websites. So kind of give you an example of this, I'm doing also Moneyline Odds in this case. So say I have looking for the outcome of a game, and the odds are 2.15 and 1.75. The winnings on a $10 bet would basically just multiply the values. So you have the total value on the right there, which is $21, and your winnings on a $10 bet would be $11.50. So you can calculate what your winnings are by subtracting the decimal odds by 1 and see what that number is. And so then again, for the team B, the winnings would be 7.5 or 17.5 as their total winnings for this particular case. But decimal odds are really easy to do. And so now that we know the odds, I want to go over the types of bets you can do. And so there's basically game bets, future bets, and proposition bets. So game bets are you actually bet on an individual game. And essentially you can basically have three types of outcomes. You can have one team wins, and one of the teams wins, so that's two outcomes, or a team draws. In baseball and in American football, you generally don't have draws, but some other events, specifically soccer, association, football, hockey, you'll see draws. Then there's futures bets, and this is where you bet to see who's going to win a championship or who has the most scores in the whole season. Generally, futures bets cover a whole season or sometimes a half a season for baseball, where they have where the Major League Baseball, they have the All-Star games in the middle of the season, so they have a break to see how many games you're going to win. But basically, these are predictions of how a team's going to do before the season starts. And sometimes with championships, they'll have, as the season goes, but the odds are changing. And then prop bets or proposition bets are usually outcomes from particular games. So in American football, sometimes in big games like the Super Bowl or championship games, they'll have a coin toss bet. You might also have a bet who's going to make the first catch or who's going to make the first goal, or types of proposition bets. So now I'm going to go over the in-game type of bets. So basically, for most sports, you have a money line bet, an against the spread bet, and an over-under bet. So essentially, you can have 3 types of bets per game. For the money line bet, basically you're picking the winner of the game. And the odds are adjusted for this, so the odds won't be even. They'll be adjusted based on who the casino thinks is the favorite and the underdog. And they'll adjust these odds so they get a little bit of a percentage of the money from the winnings. The next one is against the spread. Against the spread is the casino gives a little bit of a point advantage to consider who's the winner and loser set by the casino. So generally you'll see this as a negative or a positive value under the spread. And the positive value means that team score plus how much the spread is will determine by the casino if they win or lose. And the negative number is how much you take away. And so generally these games have similar odds on either side of the bet. So basically they're saying that they're adjusting the how to see who's going to bet up on the spread or who's going to win the game for the spread. They adjust that by adjusting the spread values. And you'll see this as either whole numbers or as fractional numbers. And with whole numbers, you actually have an outcome of the bet called a push, which means that no one really won it. There was basically a tie. And so for those cases, you get your money that you bet back, but you don't get any additional winnings. And so there's basically 3 outcomes for most against the spread games. Is either you win it, so you get your money plus your bet back plus your winnings. You get a push where you basically just get your money back, and then you lose, or you lose everything. And again, there's another bet that's very similar to the against the spread. It's called the over-under. The over-under is you're picking the total score of both teams, how many points they're going to have, and then you bet if it's going to be over that value or under that value. And again, for that particular case, you can also get a push. And so, but again, these both have similar odds, which generally you get basically about 90% winnings from your bet payout for both winnings and under cases, and they adjust the betting by raising or lowering the spread. So to give you a typical example of a game day bet, you might see, like for this case, for an NBA game, Philadelphia against Memphis, so the 76ers against the Grizzlies, you'd see the money line be 120 plus 120 for Philadelphia and negative 140 for Memphis. So this is basically saying Philadelphia is the underdog. So if you bet with them, you're going to get $120 plus your winnings back. And then for Memphis, you're basically going to get about $75. So 100 divided by 140 plus your money back if they win. So you get a little bit less. So basically, if you think Memphis has a good chance of winning, you might bet on them, even if you don't think they're strictly going to win, so you're going to get a better payout or a better value in gamblers' terms. The next column you see is the spread. And so basically saying, since like I said before, Philadelphia's the underdog, they get a 2.5 point advantage when it calculates of who beats the spread. So if Philadelphia loses by only 1 or 2 points, you still consider winning the game, and you still get a winnings. So, then if Memphis has to win by 3 points or more for you to get the money from the bet. So that's against the spread, and this is basically the most common one you'll see in the United States. The final one, it says total. You also see that it's over/under at casinos. In this particular case, the casino thinks that there's 210 points that both teams will score. And then you basically have the odds on the right being negative 210, basically saying the casino will basically pay back even odds if you bet over or under. It's the same odds, and it's 210 instead of 100, because they're basically taking a little bit of money out of your bet And again, this is called the vig or vigorish or the casino juice that they're taking out. So they're getting, this is where they're getting a little bit of money by basically getting not the true odds of what they think the bet's going to be, but taking a little bit worse odds. And you also see the 210 on the spread. So basically that's saying is if you bet $100 on this, on one of those outcomes, you'll get $91 back essentially. And so this is the most common. If you start doing sports betting, this is the game day bets will be the most. The game bets will be the most common bets you'll do. But there are also additional bets like future bets. Now this is basically a bet who's going to win something over a long period of time, either a season or a half season. And these are usually reflected in the United States as fractional odds. So for example, for the NHL championship odds, for the Stanley Cup, I have examples of the top 4 teams in November 2018. So right now, Tampa Bay Lightning has 7-1 odds that they're going to win the championship. So the Toronto Maple Leafs. Basically saying if you bet $10 right now if Tampa Bay was going to win the Stanley Cup, you get $70 back for a total of $80 winnings. And then say for the Nashville Predators, you get $75 or 15-2 odds on your winnings plus your $10 back if you bet $10. And then for Winnipeg, it's 9-1. And so you basically get $100 total or $90 of your winnings, which is 10. So you bet $10. 10 times 9 over 1 is 90, and then that's the value you get back. The final bet I'm looking at is prop bets. I don't do these a whole lot because they're kind of fun bets, and I usually have a lot of action going on when I go to the casinos or I bet online. And so, but these are basically random bets that do not affect the outcome of the game. So these are kind of fun bets like who's going to win the coin toss, who's going to catch the first ball. And generally they use the proposition bets on very, very big games like the Super Bowl or the World Series, or the Stanley Cup, or the World Cup. And basically what these are is kind of, generally in those games there's not a whole lot of other action going on. So the casino's trying to make a little bit extra money by having kind of just more fun bets to keep people in the casinos and in the sports book making bets. And so these prop bets are also called novelty bets, are kind of just fun ones for the game. But generally they don't have an outcome in the game. They're kind of, when you do them, you're kind of just guessing. So I hope you enjoyed this video and I hope you learned something. I'm going to be coming out with additional bets on specific sports coming out, as well as talking about kind of more exotic bets like parlay bets, as well as how to optimize the money you make on your bets. So if you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe to my channel.